Brain, behavior, and evolution. Approaches and methods in study of behavior. Animal behavior can be studied in laboratory, in zoo, or in wild. The complete understanding of behavior, its neural mechanism is gained through a number of methods. The psychology and etiology both related to behavior. The psychologists keep the animals in confinement. They try surgical procedure mostly in laboratories to evoke behavior, while the etiologists stay behavior in wild. The study of behavior can have two approaches. One, with relation to brain and psychology, carried out in the laboratory by neuroanatomical, neurophysiological, and neurochemical methods. Two, study in wild or natural habitat. It uses ad libitum for focal sampling techniques, scan sampling techniques, all occurred, and 1-0 method. Various control centers of hypothalamus, posterior and anterior. Posterior, dorsomedial nucleus, GA stimulations, and posterior hypothalamus increases blood pressure, pulmonary dilations, and shivering. 3. Perifornical nucleus, Hungary, increased blood pressure and rag. Ventromedial nucleus, Satellite and endocrine control. Mammary bodies, feeding reflexes, acute nucleus and periventricular zone. Neuroendocrine control. Lateral hypothalamic areas not shown, thirst and hungry. Anterior, paraventricular nucleus, oxytocin release, water conservation. To medial preoptic area, bladder contractions, decrease heart rate, decrease blood pressure. Posterior preoptic area, anterior hypothalamic area, body temperature regulations, panting, sweating, thyrotropin inhibition. Optic chiasm, optic nerves, supraoptic nucleus, vasopressin release. Infundibulum, neuroanatomical method. It is the oldest and the most crude method. The certain regions of the brain are destroyed and their function is directed from abnormal behavior. Its cause in animals. The larger the larger removal of tissue, ablation, or pathologic changes in tissue lesions may be carried out by means of cut, while the localized and small lesions are produced by passing the electric current through the platinum iridium electrodes to cauterize the area. These small lesions can also be created by neurotoxic cyanide acid. A lesion is in a Broca's area of human brain causes slurring in speech, and there is difficulty in understanding the words spoken by such a person through the through the person who talks sensible, while if a lesion is in Vernix area, the person can talk clearly, but the speech will not be articulated or coherent. The experimental findings that the toad brain has zones responsible for triggering of prey catching, optic tectum, and avoidance behavior TP region is supported by ablation experiment. The lesion experiment suggests that the amygdala, the medial hypothalamus, and periaqueductal gray of midbrain are responsible for control of aggression and defense. Lashy in 1938 and proposed the law of equipotential to understand the neural mechanism of learning. The lesion in hypothalamus can lead to adapsia, hyperdipsia, aphagia, and hyperphagia. The lesion is ventromedial hypothalamus increases the hunger of animals to such a great degree that they may eat themselves, which indicates that the destroyed area had a satiety center. While the lesion in the lateral hypothalamus can cause the animal to stop eating forever because the destroyed part contained the feeding center. This technique has also contributed in locating the sensory and motor regions in the cortex. The effect caused by the stimulations. In addition, the stimulations of or lesion in the hypothalamus often have profound effect on emotional behavior of animals and human beings. In animals, some of the behavioral effect of stimulations are as follows. One, the stimulation in the lateral hypothalamus not only causes the thirst and eating as discussed above, but also increases the general level of activity of animals, sometimes leading to our range and fighting as discussed subsequently. 2, the simultaneous the stimulation in the ventromedial nucleus and the surrounding area mainly causes the effects opposite to those caused by the lateral hypothalamic stimulation, that is a sense of satiety, decreased eating, and tranquility. 3, the stimulation of the thin zone of periventricular nuclei located immediately adjacent to the third ventricle, or all or also stimulations of the gray central gray regions of mesencephalon that is continuous with this portion of hypothalamus usually leads to fear and punishment region. 4, the sexual drive can be stimulated from several areas of hypothalamus, especially the most anterior and most posterior portions of a hypothalamus. The effects caused by the hypothalamic lesions. Lesion in the hypothalamus is general cause effects opposite to those caused by the stimulations. 1, bilateral lesions in the lateral hypothalamus will decreases drinking and eating almost to zero, often leads to the lateral starvation. These lesions causes extreme passivity of animals as well as with loss of most of our drives. B, the bilateral lesions of ventromedial areas of hypothalamus causes effects that are mainly opposite to those caused by the lesions of the lateral hypothalamus. Excessive drinking and eating as well as the hyperactivity and often continuous savagery along with the frequent bout of extreme range on the slightest provocations. The stimulations or lesions in other regions of the limbic system, especially in the amygdala, the septal area, and the region in the mesencephalon, often causes effects similar to those exerted by the hypothalamus. The experimental methods. The view of various experimental method to use to study brain and behavior relationship. Experimental methods divided into A, manipulation and measurement. B, measurement. Manipulation divided into stimulation and inhibition. The stimulation is divided into electrical and chemical. Inhibition divided into reversible and irreversible, and the reversible is divided into local anesthetic and spreading depression, and irreversible divided into lesion, knife cut, and ablation. And the lesion is divided into electrolytic and radio frequency, cell body specific, neurotransmitter specific, and ablation is divided into chemical and vacuum. The measurement is divided into electrical, chemical, neuroimage, and others. Electrical divided into single unit recording, multiple unit recording, evoked potential EEG, and chemical divided into post-mortem analytical and real-time in vivo analysis. A post-mortem analysis divided into regional assay to micro punch assay, and real-time in vivo analysis divided into in vivo microdialysis to in vivo voltammetry. The neuroimaging is divided into audio radiography to PET and 3 MRI. The audio radiography divided into 2 deoxy D glucose, C phos, the new D2DG, and 3 substance specific. Neurophysiological method. The Galvian in 1786 and 1793 discovered that the twitches occurs in nerve impulses preparations even without any metals. The nerves and muscles were producing electricity by themselves. This laid the foundation of electrophysiology. This method involves two waves. One, recording the electrical activity from brain at the time of behaving. Two, stimulating the brain region and eliciting behavior. The electrical potential of a active nerve can be recorded with the aid of implanted electrodes, and to amplify this activity by sensitive instrument. The procedure of evoking behavior artificially involves cutting the scalp in and anesthetized animals, removing the portion of skull by special drill exposure part of the brain surface by cutting durometer. Two or more electrode lower down in brain regions. Different behavior patterns are characterized by varying level of response threshold in central nervous system. The stereotaxic machine studies the electrical activity in different parts of the brain. The first successful recording of brain waves from the skull was accomplished by Berger in 1929, who named this technique as EEG, electroencephalogram. In the second method, the behavior pattern are initiated as a result of electrical stimulations to a specific brain regions by electrode implantation, as by stimulating a particular locus in the diencephalon of cat. J. Flynn in 1929 elicited the prey catching behavior. By use of this technique, certain brain areas are identified as pleasure centers. Electrical stimulations frequently activates several neuronal circuits. Thin lines simultaneously releases various behavioral responses, resulting in overlapping effect, while chemical stimulation activates mainly the circuits. Thick line for which the chemical stimulus is specific. Neurochemical methods. In chemical brain stimulation technique, neurons are affected more specifically in their activity by application of drugs, neurotransmitters, blocking agent, and hormones. More than 50 chemical substances have been proved or postulated to function as synaptic transmitters. One group comprises small molecules, rapidly acting transmitters. The other is made up of a large number of neuropeptides of much larger molecule size than that are usually much more slowly acting. The small molecules rapidly acting transmitters are the one that causes most acute responses of nervous system, such as transmissions of sensory signals to the brain and motor signals back to the muscles. The neuropeptides, in contrast, usually causes more prolonged actions, such as long-term changes in number of neuronal receptors, long-term operation or exposure to certain ion channels, and possibly even long-term changes in the number of synapses of size of synapses. Small molecules as rapidly acting transmitters. Class 1, acetylcholine. Class 2 are the amines norepinephrine. 2, epinephrine. 3, dopamine. 4, serotonin. 5, histamine. Class 3 amino acids: gamma aminobutyric acid GABA, glycine. 3, glutamate. 4, aspartate. And class 4 nitric oxide NO. The neuropeptide slowly acting transmitters or growth factors. Hypothalamic reducing hormones: 1, thyrotropin releasing hormones, luteinizing hormone releasing hormones. 3, somatostatin growth hormone inhibitor factors. The pituitary peptide. Adrenocorticotropic hormones ACTH, beta endorphin. 3, alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone. 4, prolactin. 5, luteinizing hormone. 6, thyrotropin. 7, growth hormone. 8, vasopressin. And 9th, oxytocin. The peptide that acts on gut and brain. Leucine, enkephalin, methionine, enkephalin. 3, substance P. 4th, gastrin. 5, cholecystokinin. 8th, vasoactive intestinal polypeptide. And 9th, nerve growth hormones. 10 brain derived neurotropic factors, 11 neurotensin, 11 12 insulin, and 13 glucagon. From other tissues, angiotensin 2 bradykinin, 3 carnosine, 4 sheep peptide, 5 calcitonin. The use of alcohol, opium, hashes to abolish pain, that is to induce a sense of well-being, euphoria, relaxation, and sheep has long been practiced by man. In testosterone is if a testosterone injected into male or female rat into a central area of a preoptic region located in front of the hypothalamus, the both rat elicits the maternal behavior. Ad libitum sampling method. The ad libitum sampling provides the idea for future research and often reveals rare but significant behaviorally what is recorded or generally the behavior of those individuals which are most easily observed. This technique is used when an etiologist is merely recorded an unplanned encounter with a species during reconnaissance observations for the latter study. If the behavioral observations are being made on mother and infant relationship in these, and occasionally adult males come and interact with them, the notes could be taken on male also. In that cases, we would you say that the interactions of adult male with the mother infant died were taken ad libitum. Focal animal sampling methods. In this method, a particular individual of interest receives the highest priority for recording its behavior. To take notes using the focal animal techniques, the experimenter has a formulate criteria and follow them strictly. These criteria should include 1. The individual identification of animal of interest. 2. Prior decision about the behavioral act of interest. 3. The formation of a check sheet to carry it out in field abbreviations of long descriptive words, and 4. Each animal has to observe at a predetermined time interval, that is a sample period, and 5. Every time the animals observation performed an act of interest, its frequency and duration are noted. Scan sampling method. By this method, several individuals are observed one after the another, and the behavioral act are noted on a well designed check sheet. One important use of the method is to estimate the percentage of time the individuals of a group spend in various pre-decided activities. Like other methods, following criteria have been decided. 1. Activities we are interested in. 2. The time duration for scan depends upon the group size. 3. Duration of the intervals. The scan records activities of all individuals of that group between a predetermined sample time. This task is preferably carried from dawn to dusk. If the note are taken for a day, then at the end you would know how much activities you noted, total number, and out of the percentage of other activities can be calculated. Sampling methods. It may be desirable to focus on one or limited number of behavior and record all occurrence of them. In this, the note could be more specific. All occurrence of specific behavior are possible if the following factors exist. 1. Observational conditions are adequate to behavior has been carefully defined so that they recognize it easily. 3. The behavior do not occurs more often or more rapidly than the observers can record them. Sequence sampling method. In sequence sampling, the focus is on a chair of behavior. They may be performed by a single individual. The inhalation of sample period is usually determined by beginning of sequence, and sample period terminates when the observed set sequences terminates. 1-0 sampling method. In this sampling methods, the observers scores whether behavior occurs 1 or not 0 during a short interval of time sample period. It is suitable for recording states and or even. This method is also called as a Hansen system. Eisenberg in 1972. It has the following features. 1. It has a sample period. The occurrence or non-occurrences is scored. 2. The behavior of one or two individual is recorded in the same sample period. 3. The occurrence refers to either an event or a state. 4. The sample period are generally short. 5. The results are presented as frequencies. Proximate and ultimate causations. The sociobiology is defined as a systematic study of evolutionary basis of all forms of social behavior in all organisms. The sociobiology provides us two ways of interpreting behavior: the proximity and ultimate causation. The proximate causation, the explanation of an animal behavior based on trigger stimuli and internal mechanisms. The ultimate causation, the explanation of an animal behavior based on principle of evolution. The ultimate causation requires that the behavioral and physical trait are genetically heritable and explains behavioral by correlation between the traits to mechanisms that favors evolutionary development, such as natural selections. The altruism and evolutionary group selections. Edward V.C. Viney suggested that animals require their own population density through the altruistic behavior. For example, under crowded conditions, many birds ceases reproducing. The interpretations of this phenomena was that these birds were being altruistic. Their features to breed was for the ultimate good for species. The altruism means the risking loss of fitness in an act that could improve the fitnesses of another individuals. He suggests a mechanism called a groups that had altruistic behavior would have a survival advantages over group that did not. In 1966, G. Williams refuted the altruistic view with the change that individuals that performed altruistic act would be selected. In other words, the organisms not performing altruistic act would have a higher degree of fitness. Williams held that the apparent altruism had interpreted on the basis of benefits occurring to the individual performing the altruistic act. Thus, the biological altruism is a course of action that enhances the expected fitness of another to the expense of one's own fitness. Whether the altruism occurs depends on several things: on the population, individual conditions, on the definition of altruism as absolute or relative fitness reductions. Kin selection and reciprocal altruism. The kin selection refers to the apparent strategies in the evolution that favors the reproductive success of an organism's relatives, even at the cost to their own survival and reproduction. The classical examples is a eusocial insect colony in which the sterile female acts as a worker to assist their mother in the production of additional offspring. The kin selection refers to the changes in the gene frequencies across generations that are driven at least in part by interaction between the related individuals, and this forms must be conceptual basis of theory of social evolution. Indeed, some cases of evolutions by natural selection can only be understood by considering how biological relatives influences one another fitness. Under natural selection, a gene encoding a trait that enhances the fitnesses of each individual carrying it should increases in frequency within the population, and conversely, a gene that lowers the individual fitness of its carriers should be eliminated. Kin selection suggests that the altruistic behavior is strongest between the close relatives and less common as a genetic relatedness degrees. The study shows that most cases of altruistic behavior involves close relatives and thus improves the individual inclusive fitness. When altruistic behavior involves non-related animals, the explanation offers is reciprocal altruism. There is no immediate benefits of altruistic individuals, but some future benefits may occur when they helped animals may return the favor. The reciprocal altruism often is used to explain in altruism in human. In evolutionary biology, the reciprocal altruism is the behavior whereby an organism acts in manner that they temporarily reduce its fitness while increasing another organ's fitness, with the exception that the other organism will act in a similar manner at the latter time. The concept was initially developed by Robert Triver to explain the evolution of cooperation as instance of mutually altruistic act. The concept of reciprocal altruism, as introduced by the Triver, suggested that the altruism defines as an act of helping someone else, although incurring some cost of this act, and could have evolved since it might be beneficial to incur this cost if there is a chance of being in a reverse situation where the person whom I helped before may perform a altruistic act towards me. The neural basis of learning. The axons are the basic cellular units of a nervous system which transmits the electrical or chemical signals from one location in an animal's body to another, and in central nervous system. Intra connecting axon house memory, decision making, and other integrative functions. The message are usually carried between axons by neurotransmitter. The most common neurotransmitter is a choline, which is often is the messenger between the axons and muscles. When an action potential or nerves impulses reaches the end of the axon, the transmitter is released and causes a depolarization of a membrane to the next axon or of the muscle cells. An enzyme, acetylcholine esterase, breaks down the acetylcholine once the message is transmitted. Other commonly discussed neurotransmitters are octopamine, serotonin, and dopamine, which more commonly have functions in the central nervous system. Neural basis of memory. Some learning and memory can be localized in specific brain accesses. The learning is the modification of behavior by the experiencer. The memory is the ability of the nervous system to retain what is learning and what is experience. Even very simple animals can learn and remember, but these two abilities are more highly dependent in humans. Learning that leads to long-term memory and modification of the memory had involved a long-lasting synaptic changes. A form of learning that is widespread among the animal species is associative learning, in which two unrelated stimuli becomes linked to the same response. The simplest examples of associative learning is the conditional reflex discovered by the Russian psychologist Ivan Pavlov and Richard Thompson experiment. The Pavlov was studying the control of digestive function in dogs and observed that a dog salivates as sight or smell of food, a simple autonomic reflex. He discovered that if he rang a bell just before food was presented to the dog, after a few trials, the dog was salivate at the sound of bell, even if no food follows. The salivation reflex was condition to the be associated with the sound of bell. The stimulus that normally is unrelated to feeding and digestion. In the study led by the Richard Thompson, the eye blend reflex of a rabbit in response to the puff of air directed to as its eye was conditioned to be associated with the tones stimulus. After conditioning, the rabbit blinked when it heard the tone. A small and specific area of cerebellum was discovered to be necessary for this condition reflex. Thus, it was possible to localize learning to an identifiable set of synapses in the mammalian brain. Some regions of association cortex are reported to have vivid memories, yet the destruction of a small area of the brain does not completely erase a memory. So it is postulated that the memory is a function distributed over many brain regions, and that a memory may be simulated via many different routes. There is a immediate memory for even that or happen now immediately. Memory is almost perfectly photographic, but it lasts only seconds. The short term memory contains less information, but it lasts over on the order of 10 to 15 minutes. The repetition or use facility the transfer of short term memory to long term memory, which can last for days, months, or years. The neuronal mechanism for the transfer of short-term memory to long-term memory is due to limbic system, notable by the hippocampus. The language ability or localized in the left cerebral hemisphere, which is 97% of people. This phenomenon is referred to as a lateralization of language function. The Broca's area, located in the frontal lobe just in front of the primary motor cortex, is essential for speech. In the temporal lobes close to its border, the occipital lobe is a Wernicke's area, which is more involved with the sensory than with the motor aspects of language. The damage to Wernicke's area can cause a person to lose the ability to speak sensibly while retaining the abilities to form the sound of normal speech. Near Wernicke's area is a angular gyrus, which is believed to be essential for integrating spoken and written languages. The different regions of left cerebral cortex participate in the process of A, repeating a word that is heard, and B, speaking a written word. The neural basis of cognition. Until 1993, there were a sufficient number of experimental examples of animal cognitions directed at understanding naturally occurring complex behavior. For example, scattering, hoarding songbirds like the Morstit Portus palustris can store many hundreds of food items, accurately retrieving a subspatial proportions of this food after a few hours of or days. The congeneric species, such as the great tit Parus major, do not store foods and therefore do not seems to require this kind of memory capacity. Comparing to the learning and memory ability of these and among storing and non-storing birds reveals some evidence supporting the prediction that the storing species had a better spatial memory. Similarly, the polygynous male meadow wolf, Microtus pennsylvanicus, which expands its range during the breeding season to search for mate, has a superior spatial ability compared with both the more sedentary female meadow wolf and the female and male prairie wolves. Microtus ocrogaster. Microtus ocrogaster, a closely related monogamous species that do not undergo range expansion. The comparative analysis explaining the relationship between the specific neural substrates. For example, the hippocampal volume. The hippocampus is the area of the brain playing a major role in processing spatial information. We show to be significantly large in food storage songbirds, that is non-storing songbirds, and was also found to be larger in male polygynous wolves, that is corn specific females. More recent comparative analysis have shown that the hippocampal volume is enlarged concomitantly with several behaviors that apparently requires an increased demand for spatial memory. The greater size of hippocampus in food store appears to be caused, at least in part, by an increase in number of neurons, not their density, and might be due to the combination of neurogenesis and inhibition of apoptosis. Neural basis of sleep and arousal. The sensory information ascending the spinal cord to final destination in the forebrain passes through the brain stem. Many sensory fibers gives off collateral branches that forms synapses with a network of brainstem neurons called reticular stem. The reticular stem is a highly complex network of axon and dendrites. Within the reticular system are many dendritic group of neurons, such as autonomic distinct group of neurons in the central nervous system is called the nucleus. High level of activity in the reticular system influences the nuclei to maintain the brain in a working condition. Low level of activity enables sleep. A dominant feature of human behavior is a daily cycle of sleep and walking. All birds and mammals and probably all other vertebrates sleep. Loss of sleep impairs alertness and performance. Since sleep is regulated, the body must either produce a sleep promoting substances or a wakefulness promoting substances. It has been suggested that adenosine may play a role in control of sleep. Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine antagonistic decreases EEG signs of cortical arousal, while agnostics increases them. B. The activation of cerebral cortex and increased release of acetylcholine stimulates by the group of acetylcholine neurons located in the basal forebrain. 2. Norepinephrine. The locus coeruleus is a dark colored group of norepinephrine cell bodies located in the pons near the rostral end of the floor of fourth ventricle, involved in the arousal and vigilance. B. Norepinephrine increases an animal's ability to pay attention to stimuli in the environment. 3. Serotonin. 1. Most of the brain's 5 hypothalamus neurons are located in the rapid nuclei, which is located in the medullary and pontine region of reticular formation. B. The stimulation of the neuron causes locomotion and cortical arousal. 3. 5 hypothalamus neuron is in rapid nuclei, activates highly during the awake state and less during the deep stage of sleep. Most sleep research conducted in the sleep laboratory. 2. The attached electrodes to measure EEG and EMG electromammogram to measures the muscle activity, and EOG electrooculogram to measures eye movement. 3. EEG stage 4 awake. 1. Alpha activity, smooth electrical activity of 8 to 12 Hz records from the brain state of relaxation. 2. The beta activity, irregular electrical activity of 13 to 30 Hz records from the brain state of arousal. And 3. Stage 1 sleep, transitional between the sleep and wakefulness. And 5. Theta activity, EEG activity of 3.5 to 7.5 Hz that occurs intermittently during the early stage of glows, waves, sleep and REM sleeps. EEG stages. Stage 2 sleep. The EEG is generally irregular but contains periods of theta activities, sleep spindles and K complexes. Some experiments believe that the sleep spindle represents the activity of mechanisms that is involved in keeping a person asleep. 3. Stage 3 and 4 sleep. The delta activity, regular synchronous electrical activity of less than 4 Hz record from the brain, occurs during the deepest stage of slow wave sleep. REM sleep, a period of desynchronized EEG activity during the sleep, at which the time dreaming, rapid eye movements, and muscular paralysis occurs. 1. Dreaming during this stage tends to be narrative in form. The stage 1 to 4 refers to as a non-REM sleep, and stage 3 to 4 refers to as a sleep wave sleep. And during the rest of the night, the subject will alter period between the period of non-REM sleep and REM sleep. Each cycle about 90 minutes long, containing 20 to 30 minutes of REM sleep. Biological clock. Chronobiology. The chronobiology encompasses many fields in the biology science, which ultimately concerned with the study of biological rhythm and the biological clock that are responsible for the generation of these rhythm. Biological clock also exists as a endogenous internal rhythm of fairly intense activity and usually follows a circadian 24 hours cycle. The phytochrome system functions to mark a dark or light period, but it apparently does not provide a measure of its duration. The two mechanisms may function together to enable the plant to detect the actual time spent in light and darkness. The rhythmicity of a biological clock seems to arise from alteration of membrane permeability. The characteristics may be due to either alteration in protein structure or alternative changes in the concentration or characteristics of the phospholipids of the membrane. The phytochrome is either of their alternative structure may alters the set point of the clock by changing the characteristics of the cell membrane. Thus the thus the photo periodicity may ultimately be regulated at the level of cell membrane. The circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm are maintained by the biological clock. A biological clock resides within the cells of all eukaryotes and some prokaryotes. The major outward manifestation of this clock are known as a circadian rhythm, from the Latin circa about and dies day. The circadian rhythm or biological cycle can characterize in two ways. The period is the length of one cycle, and the amplitude is the magnitude of change over the course of the cycle. The circadian rhythm have some important characteristics. 1. The period is insensitive to temperature, although lowering the temperature may reduce the amplitude of the rhythmic effect. 2. The circadian rhythm are highly persistent. They may continue for days even in an environment in which there are no light dark period. 3. The circadian rhythm can be entrained within limits or by light dark cycles that differs from 24 hours. 4. A brief exposure to light can shift the peak of cycle. It can cause a phase shift. The resetting of circadian rhythm by environmental cues is called as a entrainment. The circadian rhythm, biological rhythm, can be characterized by two ways and by amplitude. In mammals, the master circadian clock is located in two tiny groups of cells just above the optic chiasm, the place where the two optic nerve crosses. These structures are called as a suprachiasmatic nuclei, SCN. In mammals, the suprachiasmatic nuclei are destroyed. It contains a circadian rhythmicity. The retina of the eye is a classical photoreceptor and contains photoresponsive retinal ganglion cells. These cells contains a photopigments called melanospin. Follows a pathway called retinohypothalamic tract leading to the suprachiasmatic nuclei. It is interesting to note that if the cells from the suprachiasmatic nuclei are removed and cultured, they maintain their own rhythm in the absence of external use. It appears that the suprachiasmatic nuclei takes the information on day length from the retina, interprets it, and passes it on to the pineal gland, which then secretes the hormone melatonin. In response, the secretion of melatonin peaks at night and ebbs during the day. The circadian rhythm are found in every animal group as well as the protists, plants, and fungi. But only vertebrates have. But only the protist will have the suprachiasmatic nuclei. In most non-mammals, the master clock contains the photoreceptor that directs sense changes in light and synchronize behavior. The genetics of circadian rhythm. A gene called period per PER was discovered in fruit fly. The mutation of this gene causes a fly to have either short or long free running circadian periods. 2. The mutation of a circadian gene, timeless TIM, causes a loss of a circadian rhythm in fruit fly. The circadian rhythm are generated by a molecular clock. The period and timeless genes and the clock and cycle genes are homologous to clock gene found in a wide range of organisms. 1. The CLK and CY genes are transcribed in the nuclei. The mRNA transcript are translated in the cytoplasm. 2. The CLK and CY are proteins dimerize in the cytoplasm. They then enters the nuclei where they activates the transcription of the PER and HPER and HIM. 3. The PER and HIM genes are transcribed in the nucleus and the mRNA transcribes and translate in the cytoplasm. 4. The PER and TIM protein dimerize in the cytoplasm, then enters the nucleus where they inhibit the transcription of CLK and CYS. 1. The PER and TAM protein dimerize in the cytoplasm and resulting heterodimer enters the nucleus where it inhibits the transcription of the PER and TIM genes. 2. The PER and TAM heterodimer does this by blocking the heterodimer of two other clock genes, clock CLK and cycle CYC, that promotes PER and PER and TIM transcription. This molecule negative feedback loops is just one of the several such loop in the circadian clock of fruit fly. 2. The CCAI, the Circadian and Clock Association 1, and LHY, the late elongated hypocortical, that encodes the closely related HYB transcription factor that regulates the circadian rhythm in Arabidosis. When the circadian clock associated 1 and late elongated hypocortical or co-expressed under a constant light or dark conditions, the plants becomes arrhythmial and mRNA signal reduces, contributing to a negative feedback loop. The circadian and clock association 1 and late elongation hypocortical expression also oscillates. A peak is in early morning while the TOC1 oscillates and peak in the early evening. For post observations and study, it is hypothesized that these three components model or negative feedback loop in which overexpression CCA1 and L and C, the circadian and clock association 1 and late elongation hypocortical represents the TOC1 and overexpressed TOC1 is a positive regulator CCA1 and LHY. A small portion of transcriptional feedback loop in Arabidosis. The LHY and CCA1 are considered negative elements due to its repression agent, the TOC1 in the morning, while TOC1 is considered a positive element because it results in increasing transcription of LHY and CCA1 during the evening because of its accumulation. In the molluscus bulla, for example, the cell driving circadian rhythm or in the eye, the birds do have SCN suprachiasmatic nuclei. But the master clock of at least some species resides in the pineal gland, a mass of tissue between the cerebral hemisphere that produces the hormone melatonin. If the pineal gland of bird is removed, the bird loses its circadian rhythm. Development of behavior. The behavior refers to all externally recognizable changes that brings about the communication and can release behavior pattern in other animals. There are two types of behavior, that is innate and learning. Innate behavior. The innate behavior inherited and programmed by genes to highly stereotyped, similar each type in many individuals. These are comprises of four categories. Kinases, they change the speed of random movement in response to environmental stimulus. To taxis, a directed movement towards or away from the stimulus, positive and negative taxes. 3. Reflexes, the movement of body part in response to stimulus. 4. Fixed action pattern, FAP, the stereotyped and often complexes series of movements responses to a specific stimulus laser. Once initiated, fixed action pattern continues to completion. The characteristic of innate behavior or FAPS. The behavior is performed without prior experience. 2. There is a stereotypic laser stimulus. 3. The breeding process produces the hybrid behavior. 4. The behavior is adaptive, the sign that natural element selection is at work. A female grey lag geese will retrieve as egg that has rolled just outside her nest. She reaches beyond it with her bill and roll it towards her with the underside of bill. If the egg is removed once the rolling behavior has begun, the geese continues the retrieval response until the now imaginary egg is safely returned to the nest. According to the George Borwell in 1968, most patterns of behavior are not as stereotyped as suggested by the idea of FAP. The most FAPs cannot easily be separated into a fixed and orientation component. He suggested the term modern action pattern, MAP. Instinct, the 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 perception of something in the environment. A laser triggers a reaction in a center in the central nervous system, the innate releasing mechanism IRM, that then causes the performance of the instinctive act, sometimes composed of very stereotyped movement, the fixed action pattern FAP. 3. A male European robin in breeding condition will attack a tuft of red feathers placed in this territory. 4. The stretching movement of dogs as well as many other vertebrates are considered fixed action pattern. Learned behavior. When animal modified its behavior in the light of experience which is not passed to the next generation are called learned behavior. It is comprised of 5 categories. Imprinting. Imprinting is learning that is limited to a specific time period in an animal's life and that is generally irreversible. B. For example, young duck or geese follow their mother, have the imprint of their mother because she was the first moving organism visible to them. 3. The outside world provides the imprinting stimulus, something to which the response will be directed. Habituation. The habituation is a sense learning not to respond to a stimulus. The first time an animal encounters a stimulus, it may respond vigorously, but if the stimulus is presented over and over without consequence, the response to it gradually lessen and may finally disappears altogether. For example, Hydra contracts when disrupted by a slight touch, it stop responding. B. Maturation is the change in behavior because of ongoing development changes in neuromuscular system. Conditioning, laboring setting. A classical conditioning, the response to a normal stimulus comes to be elicited by a substitute stimulus. The classical conditioning was first described by the famed Russian biologist Van Pavlov. The classical condition: food unconditioned stimulus stimulates to salvation, unconditioned response. The food and light conditioned status to salvation, light salvation conditioned response. The in classical condition, a desired commodity such as food comes to be assorted with an irrelevant signal. B. Operant conditioning. In operant conditioning, the reinforcement follows the behavior response. In other words, the animal must do something. In 1930s, the psychologist B.F. Skinner demonstrated the operant conditioning by employing a device now called as a Skinner box. The E1 Thorndike was a pioneer in research on what was called the trial and error learning, and now usually called operant conditioning. Operant conditioning: behavior A, behavior B, behavior C, and behavior C to food. Behavior B to food. Operational learning: many vertebrates learn by observing the behavior of others. Example: some development in birds. The species that engage in play often have a slightly social lifestyle. The play that stimulates stalking and attacking may allow animals to practice these behavior. Insight learning, sometimes called reasoning or innovation, involved the ability to perform correctly in a novel situation. In most often observed in mammals, especially primates. Learning is a change in behavior based on experience. 1. The chimpanzee are highly social creatures that lives in a complex, variable and changing world. 2. The intelligence is important under such circumstances. Courtship. It occurs as a prelude to mating and most commonly in vertebrate and insect. Most animals tend to view conspecific as a threatening competitor to be driven off. The complex courtship interaction unique to each species assures that the individuals are not a threat and that they are of a proper species, sex and psychological mating condition. These complex rituals often consist of a series of fixed action pattern, each releases in sequence by the reciprocal behavior of the other individual involved. This complex sequence is a chain of FAP, each triggers by its own signal stimulator releaser. A male stickleback in reproductive condition may attack a female entering his territory. B. After mating with female, the male chases her away and defends his territory against other males. B. He entices or attracts 3 to 4 other females with his courtship routine. 3. The male guards the developing egg from the predator and fans water over them for aeration. The female head up posture releases the male zigzag dance, which releases the female approach. The male turns and swims on the nest. The enticing the female to follow. At the nest, he lies on his side, releasing the female to enter the nest, causing her to release her egg. She leaves nest and male enters and fertilizes the egg. There are many deviations in the precise order of events in the stickleback courtship rituals. Some actions must be repeated several times if one partner is less motivated than the other. Despite some flexibility, the component behavior does not occur randomly. In any display, the particular behavior is more likely to be followed by certain actions than by others. Social communication. The communication is behavior that influences the action of other individuals. It consists of display or signals that can be perceived by other individuals at which convey information to them. The natural solution places displays the natural solution shapes displays or signals into a system of communication. If the transmission of information benefits both the sender and the receiver, the countership display of male, for example, benefits the male if they attracts female. The display also benefits the female if they allow her to assess whether the male is of right species and whether he is wrong, vigorous, and has other attributes that will make him a good father. The molecules used for chemical communication between the individual animals of same species are known as pheromones. Because of diversity of their molecular structure, the pheromones can communicate very specific messages that contains a great deal of information. The mate attraction pheromone of a female silkworm moth is a good example. Auditory sound communication is the fast and effective and can easily modify. Non-human primates have at most 40 different vocalization, each having a different meanings. Although the chimpanzee can be thought to be used an artificial language, they never progresses beyond the capability level of 2 years old child. Visual communication. The visual communication involves signal used by species active during the day. For example, the differences and countership display are exaggerated and are always performed in same way, so the meaning is clear. Tactile communication occurs when one animal touches another. Honeybee uses a combination of method of communication, but especially tactile ones, to impart information about food distance and direction. Social behavior. The social behavior is defined as any kind of interaction between two or more animals, usually of same species. The ranges of social behavior are aggression, countership, cooperation, and deception. The complex behavior increases when interaction among the individuals are considered. Social dominance. The social organization of group depends on the total number of individuals, their age, sex ratio, which in turn depends on many factors like abundance, availability, dispersion of food. Dominance hierarchy devolved in 1986 contends that the male hierarchy is much more pronounced than in female, and that males have coalition strategy. The female chimpanzee are noticeable less social than males. The female are solitary and lack the social mechanisms that allows tension control and must avoid conflict with each other. The dominance is determined by conflicts, grooming, and trading behavior involving much more than a single agonistic encounter. Richard and Shellman in 1982 suggests that a hierarchy minimizes the risk of fighting, allowing subordinates to avoid injury and a dominant individual to avoid killing their relatives. The competition for food and female is not affected by dominance, but the need to defend the territory favors male that attacks other males. A high social rank can increases a male's fitness by allowing more access to meat and mating. Richard and Skullman, 1982. Intra-group aggression. The Wall 1986 explains the integration into a community consists of attraction, aggression, and subordination to a senior member, and finally reconciliation and social acceptance. Male from the same community or rival, even known to kill each other in captivity, and yet also friends. The contest between the male usually lasts 2 to 3 years, and the winners avoids reconciliation until loser submissively grunts. The distinction between the agonistic and ritualized dominance is very pronounced because the chimpanzees do not communication rank by agonistic means, but by grunting, bowing, and moving an arm over the another. The male are forced to cope with the competition because they travel in bands and must have close rank when facing violence from other territories. The females are more likely to attack by males than by other females and may avoid the male spear altogether. However, as male rises in dominance, they provoke females less and correspondingly. The female encounters attack less often against the alpha males. Alpha males, the male groove in order to reduce the tension and relax the atmosphere. So they share female in estrus. The highest grooming rate is among the highest ranking males. Sometimes they refers to as the triumvirate. The alpha male uses meat as a political tool to reinforce alliances. About 30% of all meat is stolen by the alpha male. The males may give meat to swollen female in exchange for sex, and likewise the female have high reproductive successes upon receiving meat. Although the same line, the female bows and grunts to take leaves from the alpha male. Dewall 1983. Agonistic behavior. The agonistic behavior is a contest involving both submissive, threatening behavior, which determines which competitor gains access to some source, whether it be food, mate, or territory. The kind of behavior normally includes a ritual. Ritual is used of symbolic activity with no serious harm done to other individuals. The reconciliation behavior. The reconciliation behavior is when there is a reconciliation after a conflict between two individuals. However, many animals remains in social groups maintained by agnostic behavior. Use of space and territoriality. Many animals exhibit territorial behavior. It is a form of social behavior that partitioned resource. In ecology, the term territory refers to any socio-geographical area that an animal of a particular species consistently defends against the conspecifics, occasionally animals of other species. The animals that defend territories in this way are referred to as territorial. The size of territory varies from species, the function, and the availability source. The territories are typically used for feeding, mating, and rearing young. The territoriality is often maintained by agnostic behavior. Example: New Zealand gannet maintains the individual nesting territory by calling and pecking at each other. The territoriality can enhance fitness if the benefits of possessing a territory outweigh the energy cost of defending one. The territorial right are proclaimed continually in a variety of ways. One, auditory, such as a bird song or the call of gibbons, the bellowing of sea lions, and cackling of squirrels. Two, scent markers such as urine, defecation in open areas, rubbing part of bodies that bear specialized scent glands against the substrate. 3. Visual, as in red breast of the ribbon. For example, the dogs and other canines scent marks by the urination and defecation, while cats scents marked by rubbing their faces and flanks against object. Many prosimians uses territorial markings. For example, the red Belian lemur creates territories for group of 2 to 10 individuals in the rainforest of eastern Madagascar by scent marking. The male diademon sifaka is also scent marked different territories. Is some of these same rainforest. The male western fence lizard defends their territory by posturing and combat, but less intensely after the mating season. Mating system. The mating system is a animal inculcate different behavioral method which depends on the natural instinct that includes seeing the female genital part, sniffing, and seeing female genital part and urine. The mating system describes pattern of male and female pairing. Mating system tends to be species specific, although alternative strategies may be expressed by individual within the species. 1. Monogamy, one male one female, often paired bounded. Mate guarding to copulatory plug. 3 prolonged copulation. 4 aggressive behavior mate assistance. 5 serial monogamy. 2 polygyn, one male many females. The scrambled competition polygamy tends coined by Thornhill and Alcock 1983. 2 lex, a lek is a gender of male of certain animal species for purpose of competitive mating display. 3 female difference polygyn. 4 resource difference polygyn, male territoriality centered on a resource needed for breeding and success. 3 polyandry, one female many males, because female choice of mate seems to drive many mating system. The polyandry, at least superficially, seems to be rare. In other words, in a population, male varies in their quality and therefore in their attractiveness to female. So while all females have access to mating, only a small portion of male do polygyn. There are a few cases of resource difference polyandry in which the female is territorial and male coexist on their territory. 4 promiscuity. 5 forced copulation as a reproductive strategy. In light of sexual selection, the extreme rarity of polyandry, particularly in pair-bounded animals, and the moderate rarity of monogamy becomes more explicable. The relative frequency of 3 basic mating system reflects the action of sexual selection on the range of possible ecological conditions. It is usually possible for some males to monopolize several females, or for female to gain by choosing those few males that will have the greatest possible effect on their fitness. Almost all animals, regardless to the kingdom, for example, buffalo would lick the genital part of the female and would smell the urine of a female frequently to detect when she is on heat. But another issue is raised whereby the male can attract the female that is on heat by vocalization of sound and bellowing. This is a competitive feature in hoofed animals, where the vocalization sound of bull determines and reflects on the strongest male. They are robust enough to mate and sire strong calves. Beside vocalization and production of sound, many animals would extend their neck and curl upper lip. This is exhibited by male animals when they feel that they would like to male and no female is ready. This is eventually done to attract any female that is willing to be met, or if any that is on heat. Sometimes the tactile stimuli are noticed in males as tickling and biting of female takes place. The bulls get the sexual desire quickly as soon as the female is on heat. Arousal follow or no sooner. With the time, the mating bull would become sexually exhausted as mating continues. When mating, the bull does not concentrate on grazing, and this is a factor that makes man to encourage domesticated animals to be isolated, and mating would be allowed to at night or early in the morning before grazing resumes. Erection in bull of cattle, buffalo, wild beast, water bucks, giraffe, rams, and goat are fast, and ejaculation is fast on mounting. But elephants, bulls, rhinoceros, donkey, camels, zebra, and other have difficulty in mating due to the size of the body mass and weight, as well as the size of the male genital organs, the height of the female, and calmness of the female when mating. One method of mating system is whether be a male has a exclusive relationship with 2 or more males. This is mostly exhibited by a few primates. When the king of the jungle would mate several females, each at time when they are on estrus, the male baboon that is strong enough and can fight all other males in that group is always the king, who usually would mate the female on heat during his region and would bring forth a number of generations before be- before it becomes sexually exhausted and weak to mate anymore. This is specific system in polygamous animals, that is a polygenic. The polygeny is the most mating system in animals that is so far well analyzed and proved and tested. It usually occurs in number of animals, for examples in lions and baboons. Another mating system in animal kingdom involves polyandry, where one male has a relationship with two or more males. This is exhibited by wild dogs and hyenas. Sometimes it is very hard to identify and to distinguish mating system in the world animals like elephants, but continuous study indicates that a polygynandry system of mating is exhibited where two or more males have almost exclusive relationship with the two or more females. The recent developments in courtship indicates that the mating in animals depends on the seasons of mating that are influenced by many factors. These factors includes genetic makeup of animals, environment and availability of partners. Many animals depends on sensing ability of the male, and from far it can sense the pheromone hormone that is produced by female. The copulation among wild animals usually mostly occurs when the animals are safe from enemies, when the environment is conducive, and when female are on hot. Unlike men, the mating in herbivore is highly determined by estrous cycle in female. The presence of pheromone hormone in the female's urine would makes the male to be sexually active and to start mating. Usually direction of this hormone occurs during the normal grazing period, whereby the males would accidentally sense the hormone or when licking the genitals of female. In amphibians, mating highly occurs when there is a plenty of water, that is during rainy season. The male's frog would found to attract female, and communication is done through hearing of specific sounds. Parental investment and reproductive success. In evolutionary biology, the parental investment PI is any parental expenditure, time, energy that benefits one offspring at a cost of two parents. The ability to invest in other components of fitness. Clutton Brook 1991 and Travers in 1972. The component of the fitness Betty 1982 includes the well-being of existing offspring, parents, future reproduction, and inclusive fitness through aid to kin. Hamilton 1964. The parental investment is sometimes incorrectly equated with parental care or parental effort. Although uncommon in mammals, the paternal investment is found in many species of birds, fish, and some other species of insects. The study of the alternate cost benefits trade-offs is complicated by evolutionary history of the species, as well as by whether paternal investment is obligated or facilitatively expressed. Obligate investment means that the male care is necessary for the survival of his offspring. In these species, the selection will favor male who invest in offspring and could eventually result in males showing high level of paternal investment independent of proximate conditions. The male parenting in fish species is typically associated with external fertilization and male defenses of nesting sites to exclude competitors. Under these conditions, the paternal certainty is high. The male are also able to fertilize the eggs of more than one female, and thus investment does not reduces the mating opportunity. In contrast, paternal investment is uncommon in fish species with internal fertilization, presumably because the paternity is not certain and because the male can abandon female after fertilization and avoid the cost of investment. The paternal investment does not occur in some species with internal fertilization, including most species of birds and few mammals, mostly carnivores and some primates. Factors associated with the evolution and facultative expression of paternal investment. Offspring survival 1. If the paternal investment has little or no effect on offspring survival rate or quality, the selection will favor male abandonment if additional mates can be found. 2. If the paternal investment results in relatively but not an absolute improvement in offspring, the survival rate or quality selection will favor male that shows a mixed reproductive strategies. The male can varies in degree of emphasis on mating and parenting contingent on social example male status, availability of mates, and ecological example food availability and conditions. Mating opportunities 1. If the paternal investment is not obligate and mates are available, the selection will favor 1. A. Male abandonment. If paternal investment has little effect on offspring, the survival rate and the quality. B. A mixed male reproductive strategy. If the paternal investment improves offspring survival rate and the quality. The social and ecological factors that reduce the mating opportunities of a male, such as dispersed female or concealed or synchronized ovulation, will reduce the opportunity cost of paternal investment. Under these conditions, the selection will favor paternal investment if this investment improves offspring survival rate or quality or does not otherwise induce heavy cost on male. Paternity and certainty 1. If the certainty of paternity is low, the selection will favor male abandonment. 2. If the certainty of the paternity is high, the selection will favor paternal investment if A. Investment improves offspring survival or quality. B. The opportunity cost of investment, that is reduced mating opportunity, are lower than the benefits associated with the investment. 3. If the certainty of paternity is high and opportunity cost in terms of lost mating opportunity or high, the selection will favor male with a mixed reproductive strategy. That is the facultative expression of paternal investment contingent on social and economical conditions. Parental care. The parental care is the attention that is taken by the parents towards rearing and protecting their offspring until they attain the age of being self-reliable and independent. Some animals will extend parental care even if their progenies are able to sustain themselves. These will include man and other primates. The most common form of parental care in amphibians is attendance of egg clutch by either parent. The maternal care occurs in species with internal fertilization. They predominantly salamander and caecilians, and paternal care may occur in species with external fertilization, predominantly anurans. It may involve the aerations of aquatic eggs, cleanings or moistening of terrestrial eggs, protection of eggs from predator, or removal of dead and infected eggs. The eggs may be transported when development occurs in land. The female of genus Pippa carries egg on their back. The Rio Batrac has female brooded tadpole in their stomach, and the young emerges from the female's mouth. During brooding, the female stomach expanded to fill most of their body cavity, and the stomach stopped producing digestive secretion. In many terrestrial and some aquatic animals, the female carries the developing zygote internally prior to laying an egg or giving birth. This gives the male ample opportunity to leave the female, perhaps to reach for other mates. In a sense, the female is stuck with parental care after laying the egg or giving birth because her mate has abandoned her. In exceptional cases such as seahorses and midwife toad, the male or primary caregivers. These are interesting examples of how evolution can be driven to unusual solution. In some cases, the parent offspring and sib conflicts over resources are resolved by the death of juveniles. The best studied examples are egrets and prairie dogs. In other cases, the male ensures their paternity by killing a female's litter and then mating with her to produce a new litter. Extreme examples of this occurs in mice, in which the female aborts her litter if the male in her territory is replaced. The paternal care rarely occurs in mammals but is found in severe primate species. Male parental care includes carrying offspring, grooming them, intervening on their behalf in agonistic encounters, and preventing infanticide. In order for the suction for such action to constitute true parental care, the male primates must differentiate their offspring from other members of the group and give care specifically to them, and this care should increases the offspring fitness. The species exhibiting paternal care of infants includes the cotton top tamarins, the cocurels, Sifaka prosimians, savanna baboons, Goldie monkeys, titi monkeys, siamangs, Barbary macaques, and common marmosets. The actual extent of male parental care varies considerably between these species. The paternal care is most commonly found within a monogamous mating system, but may occur in promiscuous or polyandrous group more rarely. Though obviously male primates cannot care for infants alone due to their dependence on maternal milk. Aggressive behavior. Moyer, 1968, defined various aspects of animal aggression. 1. Territorial defense. When animal attacked intruders who enters their territory. 2. The predator aggression. When an animal attack prey, this form of aggression is not believed to be hunger induced, but rather involves the lateral hypothalamus and specific trigger stimuli. The animals it typically feed on the prey. 3. Intermale aggression. It occurs when another stranger male is present. The androgens hormones are believed to be the important in the form of aggression. 4. Fear induced aggression, always preceded by attempt to escape. This form of aggressive behavior is most evident when the animal is cornered and is afraid. They will always react with aggression before the attempt to escape. The amygdala and lateral hypothalamus are believed to be important here. 5. Irritable aggression. It will be evoked by an attackable object or other animals. The ventromedial hypothalamus and amygdala are believed to be the crucial brain structure here. 6. The maternal aggression. When the female reaches with the aggression in order to protect her young from harm. When the female reacts with aggression in order to protect her young from harm. Habit selection and optimality in foraging. The habit selection refers to a hierarchical processes of behavior response which may result in the disproportionate use of habitat to influence the survival and fitness of individuals. There are several factors which are involved with an organism's choice of habitat. The important ones are habitats or heterogeneous. How habitat selection can relate to conversion tissue issues. Indeed, some ecologists employed the term habitat use rather than the habitat selection to avoid the connotations of birds making deliberate decision among habitat alternatives. The birds are nearly ideal subject for studies of habitat selections because they are highly mobile, often migrating thousands of miles, and in the process passes over an enormous range of environment, and yet ordinarily forage, breed, and winter is very specific habitat. The foraging is the act of searching for and exploiting the food source. It affects an animal's fitness because it plays an important role in an animal's ability to survive and reproduce. The foraging theory studies the foraging behavior of animals in response to the environment in which the animals live. The foraging theory is discussed in terms of optimizing a payoff from the foraging decision. The payoff for many of these models is the amount of energy an animal receives per unit time. More specifically, the highest ratio of energetic gains to cost while foraging. Foraging theory predicts that the decision will maximize energy per unit time, and therefore delivery the highest payoff will be selected. Some factors affects the animal's ability to forage and acquires highly profitable resources. There are learning abilities and genetic composition of animals. A central concern of ecology has traditionally been foraging behavior. It is most basic form. Optional foraging theory says that the organism forage is such a way as to maximize their energy intake per unit time. In other words, they behaves in such a way as to find, capture, and consume food containing the most calories while expending the least amount of time possible in doing so. The understanding of many ecological concepts such as adaptation, energy flow, and competition hinges on the ability to comprehend what and why animals select certain food items. The foraging can be grouped into two main categories. One, solitary foraging, where animals forage by themselves. Two, the group foraging, where animals can be seen foraging together when it is beneficial for them to do so. That is aggression economy, and when it is detrimental for them to do so, that is dispersion economy. Marginal orientation and navigation, the migration, orientation, and navigation. Migrations are long distance regular movement, often involving a round trip each year. These mechanisms may be used in migration. The traveling from one similar landmark to another is called as a piloting. The orientation occurs when an animal detects compass direction and moves in a straight line. The navigation involves the ability to detect compass direction and to determine present location related to destination, a map sensor. Some species of birds and other animals orient by the heavens using the sun or star as a directional cues. Many migrating animals are internal timing mechanisms to adjust to the changing position of the sun and star, both throughout the day and along the migratory route. Many bird species are able to continue migrating under clouds or through fog, possible because of their ability to detect and orient to the Earth's magnetic field. The magnetite has been found in the head of some birds, in the abdomen of bees, and certain bacteria. Although its role is sensing the Earth's magnetic field has not been experimentally established. The migration is a mechanism essentially in the studying how animal cognition functions. Migration is a regular movement over relatively long distance. The migrating animals uses three mechanisms to find a way: piloting, orientation, navigation. One, orientation is simply facing in right direction. Two, navigation involving finding one's way from point A to point B. The spatial and temporal orientation, the behavioral information utilizing by the motel organism, falls into two large classes. One, known how controlling instrumental behavior, feeding and mating. Two, how, when and where controlling orientation behavior. And three, when temporal orientation. And B, where spatial orientation. The animal behavior is oriented in space and time. Spatial orientation, a self-controlled maintenance or change of an organism's body position related to environmental space. B, occurs when certain stimuli in the environment elicit a responsive sequences of a behavior that results in a non-random pattern of locomotion, direction of body axis, or both. C, the orientation refers to the way an organism itself to external cues. Types of orientation and reaction mechanism. The kindness is type of movement that is related to the intensity of stimulus but not oriented with respect to the source of stimulation. B, the stimulus produces a change in either speed of movement or rate of turning. C, as a result the animal's position is changed in relation to the source of stimulus. For example, aggression of wood lice. D, orthokinesis, linear velocity influenced by the stimulus. E, clinokinesis, rating of turning effects by the stimulus. F, taxis, the animal's body takes up a particular direction with respect to orientation stimulus. The movement are influenced by the direction of stimulus. Homing and navigation. The homing process whereby animals returns to home. Navigation process by which the animals uses various cues to determine its position in reference to a goal. Path integration, dead reckoning. Despite the lack of landmarks, desert ants in the genus Clattaglyphaeus can quickly and directly navigate back to their colony entrance after collecting food. The ants can use information from sun and the pattern of light reflected in the sky to orient themselves with respect to the direction of their colony. True navigation, the ability to move to a goal in unfamiliar territory in the absence of any sensory contact with that goal. 2. The most mechanism for navigation involves cues that requires an external frame of reference. 3. It requires both a compass and a map. The homing behavior and compass orientation includes landmark and experience, sun compass and magnetic compass. Sun compass, the experiments has been carried out to investigate the existence of sun compass and its importance from daytime migration. The caged birds were placed in circular enclosure with 4 windows. The mirror were used to alter the angle at which the light enters the enclosure. At migration time in natural condition, these birds clearly shows a preferred flight direction left. When mirror bent the sun's rays through 90 degree, the birds turns their preferred direction middle and right. Magnetic compass, an experiment that investigates the possibility of magnetic compass begins being used by the migratory birds. Used magnetic coils to mimic the Earth's magnetic field. The birds detect the magnetic north, the direction of their spring's migrations. When the magnetic field was twisted so that the north was in the east-southeast position, the birds kept their original path for the first 2 nights, but the third night they had detected the change and altered their path accordingly. Star compasses, an experiment that investigated the use of star position in the night sky, used an ink pad at the base of the cone of blotting paper. The nocturnal migrant fletcher is in their preferred direction to travel as the amount of the ink shows. In a planetarium, they projected the real sky. The indigo bunting located the polar sky and used it to find north, the direction of the spring migrations. When the sky in the planetarium was rotated 90 degree, the counterclockwise, the birds altered their direction accordingly, stimulating a cloud night. The obscure sky confused the birds. Domestication and behavioral changes. The domesticating animals may be provisionally defined as those kept and beared in and around human habitation to be used constantly to human advantage. The feathers favoring domestication in a wild species. Group structure. The large social group, hierarchical structure, male affiliate with female groups. B, non-territorial sexual behavior. Promiscuous mating. B, male does not have to establish dominant over female. C, not monogamous. D, sexual signals behavior, not morphological. Parent young interactions. Precocial. B. Defined imprinting period. C. Female accepts other infants. D. Response to humans. E. Short flight distance. F. Tolerance to environmental change. Others. A. Adaptation. B. Unspecified diet. C. Limited agility. The price in 1984 defined domestication as a process by which the population of animals becomes adapted to man and the captive environment by some combination of genetic changes occurs over the generation and environmentally induced the developmental event recurring during each generation. The domesticated animals differs significantly from animals in the wild. There appears to be a suite of characteristics that accompany domestications, and these characteristics have been linked to pedomorphosis, the retention of a juvenile characteristics in the adult body. The dog was probably the first animals to be domesticated, although some anthropologists have said that humans themselves actually deserve this title. Indeed, we shouldn't even call these animal dogs, since Canis familiaris, the specific name for dog, is more a name of convenience than the denoting a real species. The actual name might be Canis lupus, the wolf. The wolves and dog can interbreed. Both natural selection and artificial selections may be contributed to wolf domestications. It becomes domesticated. The wolves have undergo numerous morphological, physiological, and behavioral changes. Moore in 1994 finds a common factor in pedomorphosis. The adult dog has retained many of the phenotypic traits of a juvenile wolf. The skull are broad for their length, and juvenile behavioral traits such as winning and barking and subsessiveness are retained in the adult dog. The more considered pedomorphosis as byproduct of natural selection for early sexual maturity and small body size that would increases the fitness of wolves in exploiting a new ecological niche. These morphological changes includes the appearance of dwarf or giant varieties, the piebald coat colors, curly tails, shortened tails with fewer vertebrae and floppy ears. Physiological changes also occurs as both herbivores and carnivores are domesticated. The most notable of these involves changes in the reproductive cycles that ends the early stress. Behavioral changes mostly involves the tameness, a suite of characteristics that makes the animal docile and malleable or to human intention. Moreover, these changes appears to be inherited.